It started with a broken router and ended in her bed. If you had told me that a routine tech favor would end with me holding a handwritten number from a woman who completely disarmed me, with just a smile I would have laughed and gone back to rewiring routers. I wasn't looking for anything, not love, not intrigue, not even a break in my routine. But sometimes all it takes is one open door to turn your whole life sideways. It started with a text from Jason, a guy I'd known since high school. Not my closest friend anymore, but familiar enough to still call in a favor without hesitation. "My aunt's internet is down," he said. "Total chaos. Can you swing by?" I wasn't thrilled, but I had a free hour and a spare router in the back of the van. I figured I'd be in and out before dinner. I didn't expect Andrea. When she opened the door, I actually forgot why I was there. Mid-40s, wavy dark hair, calm energy that wrapped around you like a blanket fresh from the dryer. She had this way of looking at you that made small talk feel unnecessary, like you'd skipped ahead in the conversation to something deeper. Just being near her made the day slow down. I fixed her internet in under 20 minutes. It should have ended there. A handshake, a thank you. Back to traffic. But then came the offer I made too much dinner. "Why don't you stay?" And something about her voice, soft but certain, made it impossible to say no. That night turned into conversation. That conversation turned into connection. And that connection, it stuck with me harder than I expected. I left her house with more than an empty plate. I left with her number, and a new question echoing in my mind. What if this wasn't just a favor? What if it was the beginning of something I didn't even know I needed? After I left Andrea's house that first night, I sat in the van for a long while before starting the engine. Her number rested on the seat next to me like a warm secret, scribbled in quick handwriting on a piece of notepad paper. It wasn't just a string of digits, it felt like a thread tied around something I didn't yet understand. I didn't text her that night, or the next. I wanted to sure. I even picked up my phone a dozen times, stared at the screen, typed out things like, "Thanks again," or "Hope the Wi-Fi's still working great," and deleted every draft. Something about her made me want to say the right thing, not just something. By Sunday, it was eating me alive. I gave in, sent a message. "Hey, it's Eric from the router rescue mission." Her reply came 5 minutes later. "Eric, took you long enough. I was starting to think you lost my number." There was a smile in her words. And relief. I could feel it. We texted back and forth for a bit, mostly casual. She confirmed the internet was working perfectly. I told her I appreciated the meal. She joked that she hadn't poisoned me, so I owed her at least a second dinner. I typed, "How about Tuesday night?" She replied, "Come hungry." It was a simple exchange, but it hit me like a turning key. This wasn't just a thank you dinner anymore. We both knew that. On Tuesday, I brought a bottle of wine, not expensive but decent enough to show I'd tried. Her house glowed softly when I pulled up. She opened the door barefoot, wearing a dark green blouse and jeans. Her hair was loosely pulled back, and she smelled like roasted garlic and tomato sauce. "Hey, stranger," she said with that same warm smile. I held up the bottle. "Peace offering." "Accepted," she laughed. Dinner was lasagna salad with a homemade vinaigrette and her signature lemonade. I helped her plate everything, even though she insisted I relax. When we sat down to eat, the conversation took off again like a second wind in a familiar breeze. She told me about her freelance graphic design business, how she loved the creativity but hated chasing down late payments. I told her about the chaos of trying to grow a new ISP, the headaches of clients with 10-year-old modems, and the attic crawl spaces that felt more like furnaces than workspaces. She listened. I listened. It felt like we were both pouring parts of our lives into this invisible bowl between us, mixing stories and memories and little confessions. Halfway through the meal, she leaned back and sipped her wine. "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" "Sure," I said, setting my fork down. "Are you always this calm, or is that just your tech support mode?" I laughed. "Probably both. I figured out a long time ago that stress doesn't fix problems, it just makes them louder." She nodded slowly. "I like that about you. You're steady." I didn't realize how much I missed that until recently. Her tone changed slightly. Not dramatic, just softer, like she was peeling something back. My first husband, she said, was older, 10 years older, a finance guy, sharp suit, strong jawline. From the outside, he looked like the type of man women chase after, confident, established. But behind the scenes, she paused, cold, distant. Everything was about control with him. I mistook that for strength. I didn't speak. I let her keep going. He cheated on me. First it was a mistake with a coworker, then a slip with a conference girl. Eventually I realized I wasn't the exception, I was the excuse. I left. She took a sip of wine, more deliberate this time. My second husband was younger, not by much, just 3 years, but he felt like a different species. He was wild, fun, life of the party type, the complete opposite. I wanted to feel alive again. And I did. Until I didn't. What happened? I asked gently. He drank a lot, disappeared on weekends, lied casually like it was a reflex. Same story, different man. Another betrayal. I'm sorry, I said. She smiled, but it was tinged with something tired. I'm not telling you this to scare you off, she said. I don't hide who I am anymore. I've been alone for 3 years. I've made peace with it. But then you showed up. That line lingered in the air. I didn't expect you, she added quietly. You didn't scare me off, I said. You opened the door and changed my whole week. There was something fragile and sacred about that moment. When I left that night, she handed me a napkin folded around another piece of paper, her number again, but this time with a little doodled smiley face next to it. In case you lost the first one, she said playfully, I'll guard it with my life. As I walked back to my van, I wasn't thinking about work, or Jason, or routers. I was thinking about her kitchen, her stories, the way her eyes stayed on mine longer than necessary. The next few days were a blur. We texted more, talked late into the night. And finally, we made plans to meet at a small cafe in the city, somewhere neutral, somewhere new. When she walked in, she looked like she belonged there. Light denim jacket over a black dress, her hair, loose eyes scanning for me with that same soft calmness. Punctual, she said as she sat down. You said 5. I'm a man of my word. The conversation flowed again, maybe even easier this time. She told me about a new design job that was stressing her out. I told her about a promotion offer that scared me, training new hires, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. We laughed. We leaned in. We talked about childhood books, old heartbreaks, and the weirdest things we ever believed as kids. After the cafe, we walked a few blocks under glowing street lamps. She stopped in front of a bookstore window and said, My ex told me I read too much. Is that possible? I asked. He thought it made me boring. You're the least boring person I've met in years. She didn't respond immediately. She just looked at me for a long moment. Then she whispered, Thank you. I almost kissed her right there. Instead, she took a step closer and said, Do you want to come by for a bit? I nodded. At her house, we sat on the porch with mugs of tea. She told me about her father's passing. I told her about my complicated relationship with mine. When I left that night, she kissed me. Not a hesitant kiss. Not a polite one either. It was slow, intentional. I don't remember the last time I wanted to be kissed that much, she said. Neither do I replied. I drove home with a hand on my chest, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't some whirlwind romance. It wasn't impulsive or reckless. It was something slower, deeper, real. The days that followed became a quiet rhythm. Morning coffee, work, a few messages exchanged throughout the day, and if we were lucky, a phone call before bed. Andrea had a way of making the ordinary feel deliberate, even tender. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the soft sigh she let out when I asked how her day went. It was the way she paused before speaking, like she was deciding if she should trust me with the truth. One Thursday night, I was over at her place helping her rearrange some furniture. Nothing major, just moving a bookshelf and a dresser to make space for a new desk she'd ordered. We were halfway through when I found an old framed photo behind the dresser. Andrea in her 20s, barefoot on a beach, holding a man's hand. He was laughing. She wasn't. Her eyes were squinting and the sun, face neutral. She saw me looking. That was Mark, my second husband. Cabo 5 years ago. That trip was supposed to save us. She took the frame gently from my hands. It didn't. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She set the frame aside face down and muttered, I should have thrown that away years ago. Instead, she slid it into a box marked Donate. That felt like progress. Later that night, we sat on her couch, the air smelling faintly of wood polish and peppermint tea. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You're making it hard for me to keep my distance, she whispered. Then stop trying, I said. Her laugh was soft, almost self-deprecating. You don't get it. I've had to build walls to survive. I can't just let them down for anyone. I'm not just anyone, I replied. Not arrogantly. Just sincerely. She lifted her head and looked at me. No, you're not. That weekend we went hiking. Andrea insisted she wasn't much of a nature person, but she showed up in trail shoes and a sun hat water bottle in hand, like she'd been preparing for days. The trail was quiet, shaded by tall pines, and occasionally open to wide views of the valley below. About halfway up, she stopped and caught her breath, hands on her knees. You're lucky I like you, she huffed. This is borderline cruel. I laughed and offered her a granola bar. We found a flat rock near the summit and sat down to eat. She unwrapped her bar, slowly staring at the hills stretching out in front of us. This feels good, she said. Peaceful. You look lighter. I feel lighter. She smiled, and I hate that it scares me. Why? Because every time I felt this way, something bad eventually followed. I reached over and took her hand. This isn't that. I'm not him. She squeezed my fingers. I know. That's what makes this so damn confusing. We hiked back down mostly in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was full. Like we were both letting the day soak into our skin. The next few weeks were a blur of shared routines. She'd stop by my place with coffee if she knew I had a long morning ahead. I'd show up at hers with takeout when she was swamped with work. We watched documentaries, argued about music. I introduced her to an obscure indie band I loved, and she mocked me until one of their songs made her cry. This one, she said, wiping her cheek. This one gets it. One night she invited me over for dinner and surprised me with something completely unexpected. Jason, my friend, her nephew. He stood awkwardly in the kitchen holding a six-pack and looking like he'd walked in on a confession. Didn't know you two were... You know, he said, eyes darting between us. Andrea raised an eyebrow. Adults? Jason rolled his eyes. Okay. Got it. You're serious? I cleared my throat. We didn't plan this. It just happened. I figured something was going on, he muttered. You've been smiling more. He said it like it was both a blessing and a warning. That night was weird, no point denying it. But it passed. Jason eventually relaxed. We drank, played cards, and I even caught him joking with Andrea about her taste in men. He's not a total loser, Jason admitted to her, nodding toward me. So that's a win. After he left, Andrea turned to me and said, I think that went okay. About as okay as any my friend is dating my aunt dinner can go. We both laughed. Hard. The next month brought its own kind of turbulence. Andrea's mom, Jason's grandmother, had a health scare. A small stroke. She was okay, but it rattled the entire family. Suddenly, Andrea had to balance caretaking, running her freelance work, and trying to keep our relationship steady. I tried to be supportive. I stayed over when she needed help. I made dinner, picked up prescriptions, rubbed her back at the end of the day. But sometimes, no matter how much you give, people need to retreat. One night she snapped at me. I had left my toolbox in her hallway and she tripped over it coming in from the hospital. This isn't your house, she hissed. Don't treat it like one. I froze. She did too, immediately realizing what she'd said. I didn't mean that, she said quickly. I'm just tired. I get it, I said, but it still stung. We didn't talk for 3 days. I gave her space. I didn't want to be another source of pressure. Then she texted, Can you come over? Please, I drove there without thinking. When I arrived, she opened the door in pajamas, face, puffy eyes red. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve that." "It's okay." "No, it's not. But thank you for not making it worse." We sat on her couch in silence. Then she pulled her knees to her chest and said, "I've never had someone stick around when I push them. I'm not most people." She reached for my hand. "Thank God." From that night on, something shifted. We stopped pretending, stopped tiptoeing. We were real, messy, honest. One weekend we took a road trip, just a short one to the coast, a sleepy beach town she used to visit as a kid. We stayed at a little bed and breakfast with chipping paint and the best pancakes I've ever had. We walked along the water barefoot, the sun low and golden. Andrea picked up a piece of sea glass and held it up to the light. "This used to be sharp," once she said. "Now it's smooth." "Exactly." She smiled. "Time pressure motion. You survive long enough and the world can't cut you the same way anymore." I stepped closer. "But it can still shine." She looked at me and nodded. "Yeah, it really can." That night, lying in bed beside her, I asked the question that had been circling me for weeks. "Do you ever think about what comes next? For us?" She didn't answer right away. She ran her fingers down my arm and whispered, "Every damn day. Me too." The coast trip changed something between us subtly, but undeniably. Maybe it was the calm that came with being away from everyone else's opinions. Maybe it was the way Andrea let her guard down just a little more each time we shared a quiet moment. Or maybe it was just that for once we weren't haunted by our own ghosts. We were just us. Back home, things returned to routine, but with a new kind of ease. She didn't flinch when I left my toothbrush in her bathroom. I didn't hesitate to ask for a key to feed her cat while she traveled to see her mom. We were growing roots in each other's lives, not just showing up belonging, but not everyone was on board. It started with Jason. He came by the shop one afternoon unannounced and asked to speak privately. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped outside with him. "She's happy," I said before he could start. "I know," he replied. "That's what scares me." I frowned. "Why?" "Because every time someone gets close to her, she breaks a little more when it ends." I met his eyes. "Who says this has to end?" He looked down, scuffed his sneaker against the pavement. "People talk, man. I hear things. Guys at work say stuff. They don't get it. They think it's weird." "So let them," I said simply. "Let them talk. I'm not with her for their approval." Jason looked up again. "Just don't hurt her." "Okay," I nodded. "I'd rather hurt myself first." Later that night, I told Andrea about the conversation. She didn't get angry. She didn't even seem surprised. She just sighed and poured herself a glass of wine. "Jason means well," she said. "He just sees me as fragile." "Do you think you are—" She turned to face me. "I think I've been shattered before." "But fragile?" She shook her head. "No, I'm not glass anymore." That night we made love with the lights on for the first time. And afterward we lay tangled in the sheets, breathing the same air, sharing a silence that was deeper than words. I remember brushing a strand of hair from her face and thinking, this is what home feels like. Then the news came. Andrea got an offer, one she never saw coming. A publisher from Chicago had seen her online essays and wanted her to write a full-length memoir. The catch: they wanted her to come out to the city for 6 months. Workshops, book tours, press interviews, the whole machine. She told me over coffee. Her hands trembled as she held the mug. "I haven't said yes yet," she said. "You should," I told her. "You've worked your whole life for something like this. But what about us?" I smiled. "We don't stop existing just because we're not in the same zip code." She looked at me, eyes wet. "What if I come back different? Then I'll fall in love with whoever you become." She covered her face with her hands. "You make this so hard." "Why?" "Because I want to be selfish. I want both." "You can have both," I said. "I'll be here." The next few weeks were a blur. She signed the deal, packed, booked the flight. I helped where I could, wrapping dishes, labeling boxes, double-checking the locks on her suitcases. Every moment felt like it was laced with both hope and heartbreak. On her last night, we sat on the porch with 2 beers and a blanket around our shoulders. She leaned into me. "You changed my life," she whispered. "You saved mine," I replied. At the airport, we didn't say goodbye. We just said, "See you soon." I watched her disappear through security, then sat in my truck for an hour after she left, staring out the windshield with my heart in my throat. The first few weeks were harder than I expected. Her absence wasn't just emotional, it was physical. The silence in my apartment echoed. I caught myself texting her things like, "You'd laugh at this song," or "This coffee sucks compared to yours," even if I knew she was too busy to respond right away. But she always did respond, eventually. And when she called, her voice sounded lighter, like she was becoming the woman she was always meant to be. The first video of her reading from her book hit YouTube 2 months later. I watched it 5 times in a row. She wore a black blazer and a simple gold necklace. Her voice trembled at first, but gained strength as she read an excerpt about grief, love, and second chances. At the end, the interviewer asked her if any of it was based on real life. She smiled. Just slightly. "Some of the best parts," she said. A few weeks after that, I got a package in the mail, a first-edition copy of her book signed on the inside cover, to the one who reminded me I could still feel. I cried. Right there in my kitchen, like an idiot, and I didn't even try to stop it. We kept talking, of course, sometimes for hours, sometimes just a few lines before sleep. She sent photos her new apartment, the city skyline at night, a bookstore that carried her book in the window. I sent her videos of my cat knocking things off the counter. We laughed. We survived the distance. Then one Thursday afternoon in early spring, I got a text. "Flight lands at 3:15. Can you pick me up?" I stared at it for a full minute before replying, "Try and stop me." She walked through those airport doors looking tired, but radiant, like someone who had lived, not just survived. Her eyes scanned the crowd, then landed on me. And when she ran into my arms, it didn't feel like picking up where we left off. It felt like starting again, this time on solid ground. That night we sat on the same porch where it all started. Same beers, same blanket. But everything had changed. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you more." She smiled. "Liar." I laughed. "Maybe." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a key. "I don't want to go back to my place tonight," she said. "I want to stay. With you." I didn't take the key. Instead, I stood up, walked to my front door, and opened it wide. "You're already home." I used to think love came wrapped in grand gestures, fireworks, perfect timing, dramatic confessions in the rain. But what I've learned, what Andrea taught me, is that sometimes love shows up in quiet ways. In the way someone remembers how you take your coffee, in the way they say nothing at all and still make you feel seen. In the stillness between storms. We didn't have a perfect story. We had a real one. There were moments when we didn't know what we were doing. There were days when her grief pressed like a weight between us, when my insecurities told me I wasn't enough, when life pulled us in opposite directions and dared us to hold on. But we did. We kept choosing each other, not because it was easy, because it mattered. I watched Andrea rebuild herself piece by piece, not to be the woman I wanted, but to be the woman she was always meant to be. And the most humbling part, she let me walk beside her while she did. She didn't need saving. She didn't need fixing. She just needed someone who wouldn't flinch when she crumbled, someone who saw her not as broken, but becoming. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, I became too. Now on nights when she curls up next to me, her hand finding mine beneath the blankets, I don't think about what people said or how strange our story might look from the outside. I think about how far we've come. I think about how lucky I am that she texted me back, that she stayed, that we stayed. Maybe love isn't about finding someone who completes you. Maybe it's about finding someone who challenges you to complete yourself and stands beside you through the mess of it all. So if you're out there waiting for a sign that it's okay to feel again, to risk again, to let someone in after life has cracked you open, maybe this is it. Because love doesn't always knock. Sometimes it whispers. And when it does, if you're brave enough to listen, it might just say, "Text me later." If this story moved you, if you've ever been in that space between healing and hoping, Leave a comment and tell us about it. And if you believe in second chances, quiet love, and the kind of connection that changes everything, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. This is where real stories remind us that life's most powerful moments often happen in the silence, between two heartbeats. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of each other.